um, about the Black Coffee Company. As you know, our the reason why we put this together was we felt there was a need for increased financial discussions within our community. And so we formed the Black Coffee Company to essentially bring the community together and to increase this dialogue. And this is just the beginning of our mission to kind of, tie these things together. So um, I don't know if Jamie wanted to say anything else. He's a fellow co-founder. There's also three other co-founders as well, but I'll let Jamie say anything. Jamie must be driving.
No, you're doing a great job, bro.
Okay.
Actually sitting here with my daughter, Olivia Jade Butler. She's very intent in listening to this conversation so she can make sure daddy gets his business handled for her. So you got it, bro. You're doing a great job. Loving this conversation. Financial freedom is one of our 3 core values, and empowering families is what it's all about.
All right, without further ado, I'm gonna just turn this over to Miss Nina. She's a financial planner under the umbrella of Raymond Jones. And I mean, she has a wealth of information. She was recommended to us, and Tanisha and I both have had numerous dialogues with her, and I think she's perfect for this. Very professional, but at the same time speaks our language, which I think is really vital to getting us to be more comfortable with having these financial discussions. So without further ado, Ms. Nina, go ahead.
Thanks, Leonard. Thanks again for, just offering for us to do this. So one of the things, first and foremost, I always have to share whenever I speak with the public, I am a registered financial advisor. I hold my Series 7 and Series 66 securities licenses. So all of the investment, stock, tax planning, all those different things, that's essentially what I do. I'm very passionate about making sure that I just take a holistic approach to my clients' financial picture, and essentially I just make sure that their lives just respond to any changes in their life that happens, but also within the economy and tax law. So I'm just one of those people that financial planning is just something that's always been really near and dear to my heart. And one of the reasons why I also wanted to just offer some just knowledge of just being a resource is because I definitely want to play a pivotal role in rebuilding Black Wall Street. A lot of my clients don't look like me. Actually, I'm the only Black woman in my building. And so if I can play a role in having clients that look like myself, and just being able to just share the resources that I have, the knowledge and the expertise that I have, it's just a powerful thing. So when it comes to just estates and trusts and wills and things, Brandon Weber is a guy that I work closely with, and he knows I'm very, very passionate about generational wealth transfer. So he's actually the guy that kind of connected me with the Lightfoot. So it's definitely been a pleasure just talking to them and just answering questions and just kind of having dialogue. And you'll find out soon, I'm not kind of stuffy. I'm kind of the person that just, like he essentially just said, just kind of talks your language, because I'm a firm believer in making sure that you understand, just understand what your investments are, understanding what you're getting into. And that's essentially what people need. People are not hung up on words and all that big terminology. They don't invest that way. Warren Buffett is a prime example in where he always invests in companies that he literally understands. And finances can definitely be simplified. So in any case, when it comes to trust and wills, one of the key statistics that I always find um, just crazy is up to $41 trillion that's expected to change hands by 2048. So my question to that is, are your heirs prepared? Like, are you prepared? What legacy would you like to leave? If something were to happen tomorrow, is your family comfortable enough with your financial details that you currently have in place, if any? Do you have all the necessary documents in place? Does your family know where to find them? Or even have you created some sort of comprehensive business succession plan if you are a business owner? I know the Black company, I know that Lightfoot, there's you and a few other gentlemen that actually run a business together. Is that correct? Yeah. Yes. Okay. Sorry,
Yeah.
you're muted. Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I have some notes here, and you'll kind of see me kind of bounce back in between the video. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cover it at a high level, just kind of talk about what are wills, what are trusts, and, what are the benefits between the two, and why do clients create trust, and then also to kind of answer some questions that were already previously posted, and then we can also just open it up for dialogue. So I just want to keep it high level for you guys, because this topic can be really granular. It's kind of a world in itself, just specifically right outside of investments. You have as you know, your estate planning attorneys or your elderly law attorneys, even accountants and CPAs that specialize in estate planning, and also financial advisors that specialize in generational wealth transfer and estate planning. So let's begin. So when it comes to estate planning, so first and foremost, a will and a trust are both part of a complete estate plan. So sometimes you can just have a will, and sometimes you can have both. So sometimes clients are like, well, do I need both? Or, what's the difference between the two? So let's just kind of let's just talk about what wills are. So wills are just a legal document. It's a document that simply spells out your wishes. Like, Sally, I want her to have this house, and I want her to have these particular accounts, and I want my son to have this particular car and model. And it's good to always list that too, to be specifically clear. But essentially, that's what a will is. It just documents what your wishes are. And the key to having a will is making sure that's really well written, because that will help when there's a trust that comes into play, and making sure that the trust can be administrated effectively. So in other words, when it comes to wills will always rule the day. And I'll get more in detail about what a trust is, and hopefully you'll be able to see what the difference is between a trust and a will. But in a will, there's some key components that you want to have in the will. The first one is, especially if you have children and they're young, under the age of 18, you want to have guardianship. You want to designate that person. A lot of times people think if something were to happen to them, oh, okay, well, I'll just make sure that my children go to my sister or go to my parents. And essentially, if it's not written in a will, you do have to go to court legal proceedings to make sure that the judge will grant guardianship to that particular family member. But if you already have guardianship papers within your will, it simply bypasses the legal court proceedings. Another thing that you want to have in your will is a durable power of attorney. So a power of attorney is essentially a person that you want to have in place in case something were, to happen to you where you're mentally incapacitated, or you're maybe on life support and you can't speak for yourself. That person handles your financial matters. But then there's also what you call an advanced directive or a healthcare proxy. It sort of works just like a power of attorney, but that is a person that has control over any healthcare decisions that you have. So one is more for financial, the other is more for healthcare. And then the other thing that you want to have in a will is just titling of assets. So what that essentially means is if you have any type of real estate, or any type of property where you have to designate a person like an ownership or beneficiary person, that's essentially something that you want to make sure that you have always up to date in your will. Okay. Any questions on that so far? So let me know if I'm going too fast, or that's okay.
Can you speak more about titling of assets? I didn't quite follow that. So say, you own a home. How do you articulate that in the will?
Sure. So if you're married, let's say you're married and that person is listed on the deed, then usually you have joint survivorship. So if the husband, for example, passes away and the wife is on the deed, then essentially that gets, obviously that just essentially moves over to the wife. But if you have other assets, such as maybe cars or collectibles, maybe you have mineral oil rights, you have annuities, you essentially want to make sure that the titling is correct on that. And what I mean by that is essentially designating a person. Like, who will that fall to in case something were to happen to you? Because sometimes that's not always the spouse. Sometimes you marry into a person can marry into a family where the family prefers for certain mineral rights and things to stay within that bloodline. Kind of sounds a little cold-hearted, I know, but essentially that's what that means. I mean, we'll kind of get into some scenarios too, because especially when I start talking about blended marriages and second marriages, that's a doozy. But in any case,
Okay. Thank
does that
you.
answer your question?
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Okay. Uh-huh. Okay. So the next thing is just, well, so essentially when you have a will, again, that's just simply spelling out the wishes. Now, with that, that doesn't mean that you avoid probate. So what is probate? Probate is basically it's just a process. Okay, it's just a fancy way to say that the judge is going to legally hand over assets to that particular beneficiary. So in that process, what that looks like, say a person passes away and they have a bunch of assets. Assets meaning property, different investment accounts, collectibles, all those different things, all these different properties out there. So what happens is in the probate process, essentially, they'll gather all the assets. They'll identify all the beneficiaries that were listed within the will or within the trust. They'll identify any creditors too. So say you pass away and you owe, some creditors out there. They'll make sure all those creditors are paid off. And then from there, then they'll actually distribute the assets out to the beneficiaries. So sometimes I always make sure whenever I have estate planning consultations with my clients, I usually like to bring in their beneficiaries and we all have a conversation about expectations. Because a lot of times the first phone call that a client or that a beneficiary will make, they usually call the FA and they'll ask, hey, you know, where's my money? And that's essentially what they want. And essentially that it can take over a year, sometimes 2 years, depending on, how complicated your picture can be and what kind of assets that you have out there, because they can be multi-jurisdictional. You can have offshore accounts and all those things kind of come into play. So I always try to make sure that I manage the expectations to let them know it's not something that's quick and easy. It's definitely a process.
Hey, Nina, can you,
Yeah.
regarding creditors,
Hmm.
student loans, would they, if you still have outstanding balance on student loans, would the government or whoever has your loans come after your assets?
They can, but what happens is the creditors can't come after the trust. So there's what you call a spendthrift provision. So what happens to that is that means that a creditor can't come in and try to say, hey, I know how much this person has. I know that they owe me all this money. Let me go after that. There's actually provision that will prevent creditors from coming in to take that money. Now, as a fiduciary, whoever you name that person, a fiduciary can be a person that's a family member or someone that's maybe a CPA or your financial advisor or your attorney. They can make sure those creditors are paid off before they distribute some assets out to the heirs. Does that answer your question?
I'm not sure, so I'll just ask it a different way. So,
Okay.
example, say for example, you pass away and you have $30,000 in particularly student loan debt, and
Okay.
you own a house full out that's worth 200,000. Would the student, I guess the government or whoever owns the loan, would they essentially get their 30,000 from the asset of the house that's worth 200,000 that was planned to be passed on to a child or whatever?
I guess it just depends. It just depends on if you have a trust, it depends on how the trust is set up. And I know that doesn't necessarily answer your question, but let me try to explain. So when you have like a trust in place, there's estate taxes that you have to pay. And if you have a spouse that's still living, essentially the spouse will try to give pretty much all the assets to the spouse, but then whatever debts that the husband or the wife may leave, that spouse now has to own it. So can the creditor come after that? But I guess the student loan, yes, they can.
Okay.
Does that
Yeah, that, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dina.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay. I'm hoping that answers your question, but there are definitely ways that you have, tax strategies put in place so that, or even life insurance policies that can be put in place that can pay off, some of those debts and taxes. So that way you can avoid things like that. And that's just, again, just kind of effective planning.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So then let's move on to trust. So trust is it's kind of the same, but it can be a little bit more tricky. So a trust is essentially like a legal document between two parties. And those two parties is the person that creates the trust and the trustee. And the trustee is someone that carries out the instructions that you give to that person. So some people ask again, well, if I have a will in place, do I need a trust? Well, sometimes it depends on what kind of assets you have in place and what kind of wishes that you have that you want to carry out. When it comes to FAs, I'm not allowed to give legal advice, so that's what we say. We'll go ahead and talk to your attorney, and then from that point, your attorney will be able to determine if you need a will, or excuse me, if you need a trust in place. But let's just talk about them. Why do clients even create trust in the first place? And some of the reasons why they create is, for one, they want to do some sort of tax savings. They want some asset protection or some asset preservation. And what that means is, maybe there's a client, they may not like their children's spouse, or they think they may divorce. So they want to make sure that the spouse doesn't get any of the assets, and they want to keep it in the family. They can also be worried about maybe their child, like maybe their child has some type of lifestyle risk where their child may be on drugs, or they spend money or they drink, and they're worried that if something were to happen to them, all that money goes to that child or those children, and it's just going to mess up everything that they worked so hard for. And then also, too, another reason why people create trust is essentially to avoid probate. You don't have the same privacy that a trust offers when you have a will in place. So the trust allows for that family to still be quiet and kind of still anonymously make sure that they kind of have their assets protected so that no one knows and it's not public record. And then one of the biggest things is also, again, family issues. They want to have control. And again, control could be making sure that the money doesn't get, squandered by the child because that child is irresponsible or that child is hooked on drugs. It can also mean something too when it comes to second marriages or blended families. I actually have a client. He has a trust where he's been married 3 times, and the the stepchildren don't necessarily get along with him. So he has his trust set up to where if something were to happen to him, his wife will still earn the income on the trust. But then if she passes away, then the rest of that money and all the assets go to his children. Again, it sounds cold, and he wants to leave the stepchildren out, but I'm just saying there's a number of ways that you can put trust into place. So that's why I say they're a little bit different than wills, because they're kind of a living, breathing thing. They're continuously assessing, and they're continuously moving. Any questions on that so far?
Yeah, so I know you gave examples of like marriages, but say for example you're not married, but can you use a trust to like allocate to cousins, nieces, nephews, other family members? Is that a good vehicle to do that as well?
Yes, you can absolutely do that. You can name whoever to your heart's desire. Sometimes people that are single think that maybe they may not need a trust, but say if you're single, but you have a lot of individually owned assets, you can actually set up a revocable living trust, and it's a trust that's made and that's created while you're still living. But at the same time, if you were to become mentally, incapacitated or things like that, then you have someone to spring up and kind of take care of you or take care of your finances, as you may come back or you may not. But revocable living trust is also a really good vehicle to have. It is too as well in case you're like a business owner, because that allows for, if something were to happen to you, it allows the business, like the business owner, the business to be transferred down to whoever they'd like that to, maybe their children or maybe their cousin, and it just kind of keeps it really smooth, as opposed to now you got to go through probate, now you got to go through court, now you got to do all these different things. So if it's already aligned and set up right, it can be a really smooth process.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But but honestly, when I talk to my clients, honestly, y'all, when I talk about trust, one of the biggest things that I advocate with trust is really for preservation. It gets your wishes written down in legal documents, and more importantly, the wisdom that you've acquired in your lifetime, that wisdom gets passed down to your children. So that's key. That's key. Sometimes clients feel like, well, no, I don't really want to control my children from the grave. I just want them to enjoy their lives. I don't want them to feel like I control everything. And I honestly don't think, and this is just, I just really don't think that that's, necessarily a good idea to have. So I really try to talk to my clients about how much of an advantage it is that they have that knowledge, right? That they have that wisdom and they're passing that down to their children. And that's how their children smarten up, right? And then that's how you would continue on to have what you call the generational wealth. And essentially, when there's no communication, I've seen it, when there's no communication for your children and what direction they need to go when you pass away, it causes so much strife between the siblings, between the families, and it falls apart. And essentially, that's not really what you want, right? If you were to pass away. So that's one of my biggest reasons for trust as well. It's the biggest thing is just preservation and passing down the wisdom. When you think about a lot of my clients that are white, they may not even really sought out to find a financial advisor, but because their grandfather had one or their dad did, and they were left something with a trust, automatically, in a lot of ways, they're already introduced to that, as opposed to our people when we don't. And that's one of the things that I struggle with too, because like I said, a lot of my clients don't look like me, but they trust me without a doubt, because they've had access to that knowledge and they've been around it. Whereas people that look like us, it's hard for us to trust. And so we got to get to the point where we get educated, get comfortable about that, and start talking about our finances. And again, that's just one of the reasons why I'm just kind of on my soapbox about it, because I love it. One of the reasons why I even got into being an FA is when my sister, she was the oldest of us five, and I'll get back to the questions because we can open it up for questions. But it's five of us, and I'm the fourth adult child. And even though I'm the fourth adult child, I essentially acted as the oldest. And she passed away, suddenly at the age of 33. And my mom didn't depend on her financially, but it really paralyzed the family. So, growing up and seeing that firsthand, I'm definitely always an advocate for longevity planning, because one of the biggest problems that we have is that we think we have time. And if you plan while it's rainbows and sunshine, it's the biggest gift that you can give to your children and your children's children. So that's my little my little 30-second, soapbox on that. But okay. Any questions on trust before I start to answer some of the questions that I saw from the Facebook page? Okay.
So a
Go ahead.
trust won't necessarily prevent creditors from coming after their debt, because that's what I was reading online about. If you want to protect your asset from creditors, create a trust. But it sounds like that's not necessarily the case.
It may not necessarily be the case, because it depends on how the will was written. It depends on how the will is written, how the trust is set up. Now, there is a spendthrift provision that will allow it. It protects a beneficiary from getting creditors, because creditors are not allowed to penetrate the trust to get that assets. But if you are married, or if the wording on the will can be I guess, poorly written between the will and the trust, there is a way. So you just always want to make sure that it's well written and that you have an attorney that can really write a nice will for you, or that is just really knowledgeable with that. And the trust is set up correctly. That way you can avoid something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Hmm. All right, then. So there was about 4 questions that I saw from the Facebook posts, and I'll just kind of jump through those. And again, if you have questions, definitely interrupt me, because this is Q&A time. So definitely feel free to do that. One of the first questions that I saw was, what do I need to get started? And is it something I can complete myself, or do I need to hire a professional? So here's the thing, you can absolutely do it yourself. Okay, there are online kits to do that. As long as you meet state requirements, then it can be considered valid in court. But as an FA, and what I've seen, most of the time, people fill them out incorrectly. And you can have a bigger risk of causing problems for your heirs. For example, if you don't title your real estate properly, then that particular personal representative has to go out and probate out in that state. And that state may not have community property laws. It may be different laws. And there's an ancillary probate that has to take place. Maybe you have some beneficiary IRAs, but you'd entitle it to the trust, and the wording on the trust was bad. So now you have to go back through all this court process. Actually, not you, but your heirs would. So yes, again, you can. There's a lot of pre-filled applications, applications out there, and make sure it's valid. But my thing is, if it's something that you want to protect, there's some valid assets that you work so hard for, go ahead and pay somebody to do it right the first time. I'm just saying, that's just like when you build a house, it's the same thing. When you're talking about your health, you're not going to go to any old doctor. It's the same thing with finances. Finances is no different than that. So that's my little 2 cents on that. But hey, oh, a cost on that. Sometimes costs, as far as when you pay an attorney, it can range. The average that I've seen is about 1,000 to 1,500. And then also too, it doesn't have to be as complex. Okay, it can be as low as 500 I've seen. But just check within your state. So just wanted to kind of give you some ballpark figures on that. The next one is, please explain the benefits of a trust versus a will. So essentially, they're both good to have. Now, it can get tricky because sometimes, again, like I said, sometimes all you need is a will, because you may not have a lot of assets, and maybe you just want to make sure that your children take care of the house and you want to will the house to them. Okay. And you may have some life insurance policies in place. And if you have life insurance policies in place, then typically you do have a beneficiary designated already and a contingent. But one of the biggest differences is a will. So a will comes into play only when you die, whereas a trust can start as soon as you create it. And that can be, again, a living, breathing animal. And you'll hear me say that a lot because they are different. Yes, they both have directions and instructions on what wishes you want to carry out. But again, one is when you die, the other one is while you're living. And as a financial advisor, I can't recommend which one is good for you, but when you discuss it with your attorney, you and your attorney will help determine which one or both may be right for you. Because there's also different types of trust too, and that's a whole nother conversation. With wills, you still have to go through the probate process. Whereas with the trust, you have the ability to keep the finances and assets not made known to the public records. So privacy is always a big thing. And then another benefit is, again, with the trust, you have the ability to have control from the grave, okay, and administer certain finances for generations to come, and just having, again, that wisdom passed down and the expertise of another individual. 2 more questions. Any questions on that so far?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I hear the term a living will. Is that any different from just a regular will? Are there different types of wills, or is that just like a interchangeable name for a will?
Yeah, so there are actually 2 different types of wills. There's a living will, which is, again, when you die, And then there's, the one that's not. So it's like, we call them testate or intestate, but essentially with the living will, it's almost like a revocable trust. Whereas again, you can, while you're still living, you can have certain assets to spring into place in the event that you become mentally incapacitated, versus obviously when you pass away, then an irrevocable trust is set up, and from that point, your wishes are carried out by your fiduciary. And if I ever have to, if I ever need to post some other things about the differences between those types of wills, I can. Like I said, it can get really granular, so I just try to keep it kind of high level to hit the high points. But yeah, did that answer your question?
Yes, it did.
Okay. And then, so two more questions that I had from the Facebook post. The third one was, with low net worth right now, what should I be keeping in mind as I get started with this? So this is a great question. At this point, if you have low net worth right now, just assess what kind of life changes you've experienced thus far. So like, do you have children? If you have children, then definitely have life insurance in place to, make sure to, replace any type of assets or any type of income that could be lost if you were to pass away now, so that that risk is taken care of. But also get a will done, again, for guardianship. You also may want to consider like a durable power of attorney. Should you need help with managing your finances in the event that you may become incapacitated. And then if you own a business, maybe you're a young entrepreneur, maybe a revocable living trust may be more efficient for you, because then you have a successor trustee to step in and manage the business in case you become incapacitated or you pass away. So those are some tips on that. And then the last question that I saw was, after asking multiple times, how do you encourage your parents to complete a will or trust? This one's a hard question. I saved that one for the end. And that's a struggle, I think, for a lot of families. Even with my own, like my mother, it actually took me a few years to finally start having a conversation with her about, if something were to happen to her, or if something were to happen to my grandmother. And it's sometimes it's very, very hard for parents to, and families, just to have that conversation. 51% that statistics have shown have no documented instructions about property distribution. And 69% of parents believe their children won't be able to handle their finances or handle their inheritance. 71% of parents confess that they're very reluctant in talking about money. I spit out those statistics just to show you that you're not alone with that. And you don't have to be. You can also partner up with a financial advisor or attend, some sort of seminar within your area. But I just say that to say that that's quite normal. So one of the things that you can do is start by just maybe asking them, what's the history behind the family's wealth? How it was built and the value you place on financial independence. Kind of get them talking about that. Or, you know, ask them, what kind of mission statement do they have in place? Maybe you have a family now and you guys haven't discussed what kind of family mission statement you want to have in place, or what kind of financial philosophy that is. And when it comes to wealth and legacy, that's a big key part of it. So again, while it's all rainbows and sunshine, that's probably a conversation you guys can have now. And then also too, if applicable, you can talk to a loved one about the history of your family business, if you do own one, and how you intend to pass that down. But all in all, it's one of those things where I don't have like a magic way to say. A lot of times it can, if you want to have a third party come in, or if you may want to encourage them to maybe go with you to talk to a financial advisor about finances. But it's just one of those things where um, you just got to find a way to figure out what what their trigger points are. And if I find something, actually, you know what, I'll go back. If I find some more additional information from one of my other advisors, and then if y'all okay with that, then I can post something about that particular question. That way we can kind of have some more pinpoint answers, excuse me, to that, if that's okay with you guys. But the good thing is you don't have to navigate that journey alone. So And if you ever want to reach out to me and we talk about it some more in detail, even talk to some of my other colleagues, they're super helpful. They've all been in the business for over 30 years. One of my mentors, he's been in the business about 37 years, and I get a wealth of knowledge just sitting at his feet. So clearly he has a lot more experience than me when it comes to talking to different parents, grandparents, and, you know, grandchildren, and how he integrates those conversations into just those consultations with his clients. So I can make sure, if you guys want, I can post something like that and as a follow-up. Any questions? I think I'm done kind of talking you guys' ears off, but any questions you guys have for me?
Well, hey, sorry, this is Isaac. I don't necessarily have a question because someone just asked a question about just explaining the difference between a living will and trust. And earlier, like I said, I'm here in Louisiana, kind of for that reason. And let's see if I can bring up, okay, it's kind of dark. Like I said, I'm here in Louisiana and I am on what is my grandparents' property, which has been passed down to an aunt and on to my dad. And because my dad has had the forethought to, think about this type of stuff, I'm looking at it at an earlier age. My dad, he's still healthy, he's still living, but this is a conversation that we as a family have had amongst me and my two older sisters.
Sure.
Like you said, within our own families, there's always seems to be some kind of strife when someone passes. And we've seen that with an uncle where he's had a business, he's had homes and properties, but his kids squandered it away.
Yes.
So my dad, definitely didn't want that to happen. And like I said, I'm on what's my great grandparents' property that I stand to inherit is in a living will, because he has a business, he has this property, he has some timber, and like me and my sisters, we've all had the conversation, he's expressed his wishes and what we would like. So to avoid, things going into probate, he has a living will for us. So, in the event of his demise, my sister is the trustee. We, like I said, there wasn't really anything to hash out. So when something does happen, it's going to be a smooth and hopefully, seamless process.
Sure. Absolutely. Well,
Let's see if I
it's actually great it's actually heartwarming for me to actually hear that you're standing on your great grandfather's property.
So, like I said, this is my grandparents' house. I stand to inherit that house right there and the other 6 acres behind it. So that's my family legacy. That's wealth that's going to be passed on, to me, eventually my kids, so on and so forth. But, like you were talking about, people that don't look like us, they have these conversations with their kids and their grandkids. And I don't know, say my dad, didn't, think about this type of stuff. I wouldn't have been thinking about it, as a father now.
Right.
And also as a business owner. And that's how, generational wealth is passed along, like you said, is through that transfer of knowledge.
Absolutely. And there's a big, again, there's a big privacy concern too amongst many parents, especially our parents that were old school. They don't really talk about,
They don't
their
talk about money.
finances. They don't talk about it. But a lot of times, if they don't if we don't start some type of way of trying to have conversation about it, then again, that wisdom won't get passed down, excuse me. And, sometimes some parents are even worried today, like, I don't want to find my finances posted all over social media by my kids and things like that. And, some parents are like, I don't want my kids to know my net worth because I want them to struggle and deal with the things that I had to deal with, and those things can still happen. But one of the biggest things that I always tell clients that do have a lot of money, just because that child, just because you grew up with money doesn't not mean that they're prepared to assume responsibility for the management, necessarily of that inheritance. So it's always good to have discussions about it and white people, have always, definitely had an advantage with that. Again, just being exposed to it at an early age. But it's just, I'm proud to hear, and it's heartwarming to see that you're going to inherit that from, you said your grandfather or your great grandfather?
But this is my great grandfather.
That's awesome. That is just awesome. So, I'll actually be a first generation as well when it comes to generational wealth transfer, so it's great to hear that you have that. And hopefully I want more of us to have that.
Well, like I said, it all starts here with this conversation.
It does. It absolutely does. Would that be helpful to you guys if I were to post, like, have a follow-up post on some different conversation tips to try to introduce those conversations in conversation with your parents?
That'll be perfect.
Okay. Sounds good. Any other questions you guys have, or any
I have
commentary at all?
another question.
Sure.
So, what role, if any, do you think like a financial advisor should play in terms of people setting up wills or trusts? Is that something that you think someone should be able to accomplish with just a lawyer? Or do you think that a financial planner should be a part of that? Should somebody consult a financial planner before going through that process? Like, what's your opinion on that?
Sure. So usually when it comes to estate planning, your financial advisor actually works on a team. So they work in collaboration with your CPA and with your attorney. So it's kind of like a team that handles that. The attorney will draw up the legal documents. The financial advisor works closely with the CPA for tax dividends and administrations, things like that, for tax strategies. And then the financial advisor implements all the investment strategies for the estate plan, for the trust, so that it can continue to grow and have income for the next generations or so. In Texas, I want to say you can go up to 100 years. In Texas, I'm not sure what state you're in, but in Texas, up to 100 years. So they all three have different lanes, but they all work strongly together. Now, when it comes to selecting a trustee, this is again someone who has title, like who has a fiduciary responsibility to carry out the wishes that you have. And that can be a CPA, that can be an attorney, that can be an FA, and that can also be a family member as well. So sometimes people have a family member in place because they're like, hey, I trust, that's my brother. I trust him. He's going to do everything he's supposed to do. And that's good. There's advantages to that because they're definitely more sympathetic to, the family members, beneficiaries. And, also too, they just they know you, they know what you would have wanted. But some of the disadvantages about just having just solely a family member as a trustee is they may not be best for tax or legal or investment aspects of trust. They may die themselves or become disabled, or they may quit. So when you have a professional advisor, whether that's the CPA or the accountant or the FA in place, we tend to definitely have the technical competence to make sure that our dividends accounted for, our distributions accounted for fairly for each beneficiary. They have the knowledge to make sure what kind of investments are set up, and is that still in line with the investment policy statement that you originally set up. Sometimes a family member is not very well versed when it comes to investments, or even too, if you have multiple children. So again, it's a lot of facets, but if you have multiple children, maybe that mom designated the most responsible one to be the fiduciary. So now that fiduciary, as that person acting again as a trustee, they have to do income statements. They have to do K-1s every year, or maybe they may not want to give that much percentage to their brother because they're mad at them right now. So they give more percentage to the sister. So it can happen. And when you have more so of a neutral party in place, it really helps calm down the strife, because the neutral person is going to make sure that each person is going to get what you would have wanted carried out. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. And there's a whole lot to that too. Like, man, it's sometimes I almost feel like sometimes it's therapy, because then you'll have some that are mad, and the brothers, they're not speaking that Christmas, and because they're not speaking, then that spills over into financial decisions that person that's the responsible handling the finances to distribute out. Sometimes children, they get jealous amongst each other. So just maybe have a co-trustee in place, or just have someone third party like the CPA or someone to kind of come in and handle that. So those are some options to kind of keep the strife down. These are great questions. Any other questions you guys have?
I'm
So
just
you said you're in, oh,
where
go
you're
ahead.
based out of.
Uh-oh. I'm sorry. Wait,
Yeah.
say that. I think, what'd you say?
Rock, paper, scissors. I was gonna, you mentioned that you're in Texas. I'm living in Michigan. Do you work with clients outside of Texas?
Absolutely. So I have a lot of clients in Texas, obviously. I have them in Louisiana. I have some in Florida, and I actually have some in a few other states. It's just I don't necessarily have to be registered there until I have at least 6 or more retail clients. But I have clients all over the country. It's just a lot of them are kind of concentrated down south. But yeah.
Okay, because my husband and I, we've been looking for a financial advisor. And like you said, among our people, there's this lack of trust, but we know that we need a professional to really look at where we are and just to help us get to the next level. Like we have a will in place, but we know we need to do more on the investment side. So I'm interested in potentially working with you, and we can maybe talk off stage once this is over, if you don't mind
Yeah.
listing your contact information, because I think I missed that in the group.
Sure, absolutely. So I'll definitely go ahead and make a post and just kind of put my information out there. But absolutely, we can definitely have a side conversation, on kind of what you and your husband want to do. And then we can put together kind of a customized strategy on based on what you guys have. So
Mm-hmm.
we can
Yep.
definitely do
Okay.
that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else out there? Any other questions you guys have?
Melissa, did you have a question? No, you had.
Well, it was funny because I was actually going to ask where she was from because I didn't get that at the beginning, but she just answered it. So, like where she was based.
Yes, y'all. Y'all can't hear the southern drawl. I'm sure y'all hear me talk long enough, it'll come on out. So yeah, I'm a Southern belle. Hmm. Where is everybody from? Leonard, I know you guys are in Virginia, and I know
Yeah,
I was just talking to someone down in Louisiana. Whoop,
we,
whoop.
maybe we could do a quick roll call. I guess first time, but I guess we could start off with Jamin. I guess we could just do like a round robin. Everybody just give a quick spill about yourself. So go ahead, Jamin.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jamin Butler. I'm married with 2 kids. I'm an higher education professional. I'm one of the co-founders of the Black Coffee Company. This has been a very enlightening conversation. You've armed me with information that I can take back to my mother and to my wife and our family. So thank you.
Cool.
All right, go ahead, Isaac.
All right, yeah, my name is like I said, Isaac. I'm from Los Angeles. Like I said, I'm down here in Louisiana, taking care of some family business. By trade, I'm a military officer and airline pilot. I also have my own business. I am a registered life insurance agent, so I do that on the side as well. And I think that's the quick down and dirty about me.
All right, we'll let Latoya go next. Or Julius. So Julius's mic is live. Go ahead, Julius.
Hey, what's going on? Hello?
Yeah, we're here. Yeah, if you could just give a quick, intro, name, where you from, whatever. Long walks on the beach, whatever.
Long walks
All
to the
right, my
beach.
name is uh, My name is Julius Borden. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I work for the USA Today. I just basically wanted to say that this was a good show that was presented because, like you said, it is kind of hard to talk to your parents about certain things. But I was able to do that with my dad. And what we just did, we just had like a breakfast. We just talked, and he just started saying, "This is what I want to do. This is what I want to do," and that kind of helped out. I basically did it like a certain spot that we all kind of comfortable at, or a favorite restaurant or favorite thing, and I was able to get more information. And so the key is, like you say, is to basically try to network and try to basically, I would say, just kind of find out the niche to where you can get them to talk, because like some people don't talk about that type of stuff until they wait till the last minute, and then they
Right.
may lose out. You know what I'm saying? So I just kind of wanted to be ahead, just like the guy that was from Isaac, like he's talking about. I was thinking of ahead, and I was asking my dad, like, what do you want to do? Where do you want to be buried at? Where do you want to put your business at? Or who do you want the house to go to? And he just started saying, I want to be this, this, this. So I just started writing it down. And then after a while, he said, well, I've already started on my will. And then he said, I've already got in contact with attorney. So he was basically, I was kind of like the spark plug to kind of get him to go to do it. And so I don't know if he's finished it, but I know he's been working on it. So I just wanted to say this: you just got to keep on jumping on them, and find a niche that they're comfortable at. And then when you do, just start writing down and just stay on it and just try to execute it. So I just wanted to say that.
That's awesome. Yeah, if you can find those triggers, there's everyone's not cookie cutter, but if you can find those triggers, kind of their pain points, just kind of get them comfortable in the area where they can just kind of talk about, just kind of talk about it. Like you said, just kind of ask some questions just to kind of get them to open up. And every person is different, because again, when it comes to their financial decisions, we all have, some of the greatest financial decisions we've ever made and how we felt about them. And then we also have financial decisions that we felt like were really horrible, and, how we feel about that. And sometimes it can be uncomfortable to talk about. So that's awesome.
Cool. Cool. Latoya?
I am Latoya Nelson, living in Michigan, but I'm from Jamaica, married with a son. Still consider myself a new mom. He's not yet 2, so still learning the ropes of being a parent. Yeah, that's about it. Oh, I said I'm from Jamaica. Yeah, so I like taking long walks on the beach.
You know what, Latoya, when you were talking to me, man, let me tell you, I thought you were Jamaican. I was like, listen to that accent. I know she's not
Yes,
from Michigan. I just know it.
I can't hide it. I can't. I moved here when I was 18, so it's ingrained.
Yeah. Did we have anyone else?
Yeah, it looks like we got Melissa, Tony, and Tanisha. You still on? Oh, and Brandon Cole. Oh, we're getting some late new people. So I guess we can go in that order.
Hi, everybody. My name is Melissa Gomes. I was born and raised in Rhode Island, but currently live in Washington, D.C. I am a school counselor and have been in education for 14 years. So I work at a charter school in Southeast D.C. I'm single, so I don't have any kids. I actually don't plan on having any kids. But this year in particular, um, I've been like trying to focus more on myself and just things that I feel like I should have handled at a younger age, but didn't. But I guess it's never too late to start. So my finances is a big one, student loan debt, trying to put myself in a better position to buy a house, and things like that. So I actually have been trying to get a lot of information, just even in terms of like a will, which is something I said I wanted to do, or maybe a trust now. I don't know. Didn't even know anything about trust before this call. And just trying to like put myself in a better place and trying to figure out in terms of like my finances. And once I'm gone, even though I don't plan on having children, I do have godchildren and family members that I have like listed as beneficiaries on like life insurance and things like that. But really trying to kind of get a better handle on some of these things and not leave it in limbo. I've had
So yeah, my name is Brandon, and I'm Brandon Cole. I'm part of Black Coffee Community. I know several of the folks that are on the call. I'm also part of Black Coffee Company as one of the founders. I live in Washington right now. I work as an engineer for Microsoft, and I kind of came in late, so I don't know all the things we're talking about, but based on Melissa's comments, and I'll just talk about that. I'm married with 2 kids, and thinking about more kids, but for now, just 2 kids. And I am, we do have, like, I have life insurance and all those things set up, but I don't have a trust, and I don't have a will set up. I had one in Louisiana because they followed a particular law where you could basically write your will on your dying wishes on a tire, and they would be, protected or whatever. But in Washington, they don't have those same laws. So,
Right.
I mean, I have looked into some of these things. I know I didn't hear the bulk of what you talked about to most of the audience on here, but like I'm sure I know a little bit about it, but I'm definitely going to continue to follow and listen to what you have to say about this topic. In general, I want to be able to be protected from mishaps, disability, all those just different things that could happen. And at the same time, I'm working toward financial freedom. Just like Melissa was saying, I'm working toward freedom in general, not just financial freedom. I don't want to have to work if I don't want to. I want to be able to just fly out to wherever I want to go. So I'm working toward all these things. And part of that is taking care of, unexpected events or planning for these unexpected events and things like that. So I'm very interested in taking control of my life, taking control of, having to work for somebody. And it's, I guess, to sum it all up, it's taking control of my time. So freedom is time at the end of the day. And so that's what I'm interested in taking control of, and spreading the word on how I'm doing it and how others can do it. It's my responsibility. I take it as my responsibility.
Absolutely.
Nice to hear from you all, and nice to be on the call.
Hey, Tanisha, I know you jumped in there. Did you want to introduce yourself to the community?
Well, I'm Tanisha Lightfoot. I am Leonard's wife, and we have 3 little boys, and we live in Virginia. I'm originally from Maryland, and so we were in Ohio for 8 years and have now come back to the East Coast. So we are trying to kind of set up our financial or estate planning, because we've had like a will on our list of things to do since we had our first kid, and he just turned 6. So we have been putting it off, and now we have added to that tribe. And so we really just need to look at what that looks like. I think what's kind of holding us up currently is trying to pick a guardian, because we have the 3 kids, so we're trying to see what that will look like and how that can kind of escalate the picture of someone else. So we don't want that to be a burden on anyone, but at the same time we do want to plan for that. If we have any unforeseen events that would take us away from here, we want to make sure that our kids can kind of still stay together and kind of have a nice little life. So we have already set up life insurance policies and such, but we just haven't done a will. And we went to like a free seminar that talked about estate planning, and I really wish we would have taken advantage of the perk with that, because they did give us an option to kind of sit down with a lawyer, but we never followed through. So that was a missed opportunity. So we definitely need to just kind of get back on that and try to just close this loop and kind of tie up this loose end that we've had hanging for some time.
Let's go, Lightfoot family.
Let's go. Let's do it together. Let's go.
Well, the Nelsons already they beat us, and they just have the 1. We just slackers.
I got nervous. First kid, I'm like, let me get this in place.
Oh yeah, Tony Rice, are you there? Maybe it was a late ad.
Hello, this is Tony. Tony Bryce. This is my first time being on here. Just curious. I'm in a position where I don't have any trust or life insurance or any of that stuff. So I'm just here trying to learn as much as I can. And I'm a friend of Leonard. I live in Los Angeles, California. I'm married. I don't have any kids. By profession, I'm a crane operator. I'm a longshoreman crane operator. At the port. Yeah, that's about it.
I think that's it. I mean, I think everybody had their opportunity to give an intro, share a little bit about themselves and why they're interested in this topic. I guess. I mean, are there any other questions? I know some people kind of came in late, but.
Well, I just want to say, since everybody was sharing, their children or whatnot, then I wouldn't feel right. Since I've been talking, I don't think I shared that. So yeah, I'm married too. I have 2 babies. My daughter, she's 5, and my son is 2, and we're done. That's it. But yeah, they're a joy. That's it. I can't give you no more. I'm done. But okay.
But I mean, if there's any other further comments, Jamin, did you have anything else you want to add?
No, I just appreciate the opportunity that we had with this forum. Nina, I think you've just been a wealth of information to the community, and I look forward to hearing about the great things you're going to do in the folks' lives. Let's keep this going. We can do this quarterly, monthly. I'm sure Leonard may want to do it weekly.
You know me.
Let's get it going. Marathon continues.
Yep.
Well, I just want to say thank you guys for also just having me as well. Like I said, I just have a wealth of knowledge to share. It's something I'm very, very passionate about. So, just being connected and having those resources at my fingertips, why not, share it. So when I literally say I want to help build Black Wall Street, I mean that. That's going to happen. So, that's just something I plan to do. I don't even plan to retire from this stuff. This stuff is just awesome. I love this stuff. So I want to see everybody win. So absolutely.
Look, it's a passion. We definitely appreciate it from the whole Black Coffee Company and the Black Coffee community. And everybody on the call, please spread the word. If you've gotten help today, please shout her out, on your Instagram page, all this other stuff you have. Let the community know that she's out here to help. That's what she's saying she's passionate about and she's actually doing. So let's get out there and spread the word.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. This is being recorded, so I can go back and look and see what I missed.
Yes. It's recorded, so we'll upload it. You can go back and watch it.
Okay. Okay, cool. All right, cool. Mm-hmm. And what time you guys do this? East Coast time, West Coast time, or? This
is the pilot virtual webinar, whatever you want to call it. This is our very, very first one. So I'm glad we were able to get. At one point, we had 11 participants. I think that's super dope. Honestly, I wasn't sure if it was going to just be me and Nina, but yeah, I'm so glad that you guys showed up, and I'm down to continue to do this.
Yeah, let me know when you guys had the next one.
Okay. Let us know when you guys want it, and we'll do what we can to make it happen.
Yeah, this is community focused, very, very community focused. That's why everything we do is all about the community, how we can help you, how we can reach you or your family members or your friends. So please spread the word.
All right, 10-4.
All right, Leonard, you want to close out, or if there's any, I don't know if there's anything else.
No, I mean, I think that's pretty much it. Nina, thanks again for your time. wealth of information, just dropping gems left and right. And I think we are on the right path to like really normalizing these discussions within the community. It starts with this. And I think the fact that, you know, we all understand that it's a need for this, and we're taking the right steps to get to that point in terms of passing or building generational wealth. So again, thank you on behalf of myself, on behalf of the Black Coffee Company, the community. We thank you so much.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. And thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's always a privilege.
Mhm.
Thanks again, Nina.
You're welcome.
Thank you, and everybody have a good night.
Okay,
Good
you
night,
guys do the same.
Have
all
a
right.
good night.
Okay.
Bye.
Sorry about your father.
Thank you.
Mhm.